Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I'm Star Smart. Let's begin. Oh well, the fight for the restoration of the statehood of the former British Southern Cameroon's Amazonia is a fight for all sons and daughters of Amazonia. And there is no room in Amazonia for those partnering with the oppressor against Amazonia. In respect of the ever present and active Amazonian restoration fighters who have proven their worth in 7 years with a slogan of resilience, no retreat, no surrender until Boya. Colonial Republic and its proxies have developed and improvised tactics to kill their strength and determination in their continued efforts to counter Monday ghost towns and other national lockdowns decreed by the federal government of Amazonia. But as has been seen over time, the determination for independence and freedom from La Republic not just resonates with Amazonian restoration forces, but also with every bona fide Amazonian, leaving all attempts by La Republic and its surrogates meeting stiff resistance in all the 13 counties and 61 local government areas of Amazonia. At this point, the message is clear to the Yaoundé CPD and Junta that power rests in the will of the peoples of Amazonia and the protectors rather of homeland, the Amazonian Restoration Forces. Well, while exploiters and enable you to exploit the struggle and the war of liberation that Amazonian Restoration Forces continue doing their bit to protect Amazonians from the terrorizing occupation forces. As always, a lot has gone down in Amazonia only in the last 2 days. All of this happenings coming right after the prime headlines.
Here are the prime headlines for tonight. GTS issue burnt down, 12 students and staff taken away by unknown armed gang. So many loses their lives in the Tiko Mutengana roads. Farmers in Onquem receive support to boost productivity at a mini agro-pastoral show. Tonight on Undaunted, the colonial law Republic the Cameroon military shoots one more teacher to death in the local government area. Fear envelopes Mudember as two water and energy workers get arrested. Yaoundé government declares curfew in all Ambazonia's 13 counties as the end of year draws nearer. Also tonight, fuel shortage exposes crisis as it hits corrupt La Republic of Cameroon government. Tanzania confirms death of students captured by Hamas is on the African scene, and on the foreign scene, nearly half of the Israeli munitions dropped on Gaza are imprecise dump bombs. That's what the US intelligence says. Now let's get to the news and full briefings. It is very disheartening that students yearning to get knowledge are stripped naked and some abducted. These students are just victims of a fraud political system. The Law Republic of Cameroon colonial government, with President Biya at the start of the school, made a lousy statement that parents should send their children to La Republic du Cameroon colonial government schools assuring parents that they will take necessary disposition to secure the children in school. La Republic du Cameroon schools were banned in southern Cameroon, the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, giving priority only to private, mission, and community schools. With such an injunction on La Republic to Cameroon schools and the colonial government telling parents to send their children to schools, it is only to expose the children to violence, like what took place in GTHS issue. The La Republic to Cameroon colonial government should stop using innocent children as shields to challenge voices opposing them. Where is the security that La Republic du Cameroon colonial government promised to parents that children are stripped naked and others abducted in GTS HSU? Well, on that sad note, we begin tonight Undaunted. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, Onyi. Good evening, Ambazonians. Well, about 12 students and two school authorities were abducted on December 12th when unknown gunmen stormed Government Technical High School GTHSSU, Mentrim County of Ambazonia. The early morning armed attack is said to have left several students injured. The reports hold that when the unknown militia stormed the campus, they first walked towards the classrooms where students were busy taking lessons before stripping them naked and inflicting psychological torture and trauma on them, as described by the Guardian Post daily newspaper. Now, at the end of the attack, 12 students were whisked away together with two school authorities. Some buildings of the institutions were set ablaze as well. At press time, no group has claimed responsibility for this attack.
Well, away from us, so let's get to Modember to see what's happening there. Well, in Modember, the fight for the restoration of the statehood of former British Southern Cameroon's Amazonia is a fight for all sons and daughters of Amazonia. And there is no room in Amazonia for those partnering with the oppressor against Amazonia. It is often said, if you can stand the heat, leave the kitchen. Those who cannot quit their positions with La Republique du Cameroon should simply move out of Amazonia. Two workers with the Water and Energy Colonial Ministry were arrested in Ekong, a village in Mudamba local government area. It is paradoxical that public tops no longer exist in the inner cities of Ambazonia, yet we have persons going around as workers of the same ministry that is supposed to provide potable water.
Well, in a Kona village located in the local government area of Mundeba in Indian County, Atlantic Zone of the Federal Republic of Amazonia, fear still hovers among the population as three water and forestry agents were arrested on December 6th by unknown armed men. The perpetrators are said to have demanded high ransoms to free the other hostages, but neither the families nor the local authorities have reacted to that yet. The families of the victims say they fear that their family members will also be executed. The Atlantic Zone of Amazonia, which since 2017 has recorded countless confrontations between the Amazonian Restoration Forces and the La Republique du Cameroon colonial forces, is experiencing renewed tension.
Well, the population of Mudember is having sleepless nights of the unhealthy and uncertainty that lies in the hours ahead. These inhabitants are not afraid of another attack, but of the reaction of La Republique du Cameroon colonial forces with the scorched earth policy of the colonial forces and the collateral damage they inflict on any neighborhood they invade. The population is in fear that they would invade the locality. There are recorded incidents of atrocities whenever the La Republique du Cameroon colonial forces invade an area. In Gabu, they slaughtered children. They killed and burned houses. In Kwakwa village and at Mbengui Road, they set more than 20 houses on fire.
Well, now and on to this very captivating report reaching Undaunted. Paul Atanga Nji, a controversial colonial minister of territorial administration in neighboring French Cameroon, who has often been accused of disseminating falsehood, plays a significant role in representing the interest of La République du Cameroun during ongoing war between the Cameroons. Now, recently, in his extraordinary visit to Bamenda, a city that sits at the heart of political, social unrest and hub of the war, where he was born, actually, we would see another display of falsehood again. This visit has drawn considerable attention, and Colonial Minister Nji acted very well in a script we already know. Unfortunately, it doesn't pull traction. To gain insight into his statement and the reactions that they provoked, here is a video summarizing his visit. Let's watch.
Will always reject you. The state will reject the terrorists. And now the strange story is that even Lucifer is rejecting the terrorists. Lucifer's kingdom is the temple of evil. But Lucifer is telling the terrorists from the northwest and the southwest that we ask you to commit atrocities, but you have committed more atrocities than we expected. So you don't even have a space in Lucifer's kingdom. So they have no breathing space.
Motorbike riders.
Well, we are well aware that media rhetoric is a pivotal force in wartime, shaping perceptions and influencing the public's understanding of conflict or political relations. This idea is not lost on leaders who seek to control the narrative, as evidenced by reports that President Putin has orchestrated cyber operations targeting Ukrainian media spaces multiple times with the apparent intent to manipulate and sway public opinion. And La Republic of Cameroon isn't ignorant of the gains of such maneuvers.
Well, that is very accurate, Oni, and the recent video from a Minister Paul Atanga Nji offers a vivid illustration of a government official exerting substantial efforts to sway public sentiment. However, it appears his attempts have missed their mark this time. Atanga Nji seemingly enacting the directives of the administration, the colonial administration, strives to convince international onlookers that the military forces of the French Cameroon are not the agents responsible for the atrocities in Amazonia. Yet, in his attempt to communicate this, he stumbles over his words, his speech marked by a lack of conviction, by shying away from acknowledging the reported realities on the ground. He inadvertently underlines the disconnect between the government's narrative and the observations reported by many witnesses.
Well, that's not all. His unconvincing delivery does little to veil the government's reported strategic setbacks in President Paul Biya's proclaimed campaign against those in the southern Cameroon who seek independence and identifying peace-loving Ambazonians. It is impact to note that Paul Atanganji is the number one recruiter of the DDR centers. He has his own Amber Boys, and we are told that he was a former convict, a fraudster who knows the game well. This only explains what kind of colonial government and system we are all dealing with.
And on to this very interesting report in Undu local government, a sad one at that. Mr. Zqu Gabriel was shot dead just December 12, 2023. A very sad report that we got here. Mr. Zqu Gabriel, a teacher and principal that was killed at the foot of Ntamba Hill Ndu local government area by the occupied colonial La Republic forces working in tandem with Choyaba's ADF. Well, it is alleged that he was stopped at a checkpoint mounted by the colonial forces and he tried to flee the scene. Then the barbaric Yaoundé soldiers shot him dead in his car. Mr. Zqu has served in secondary education for more than 30 years in Dunga Matum County, and to die in the hands of the colonial occupational forces is something sad that a lot of people haven't been able to get over yet.
One report says he died in active service as a staff of the Divisional Delegation of Secondary Education after leaving from GHS Kuter Ako local government area as principal. His mortal remains are expected in Nkambe Regional Hospital, the next mortuary. Mr. Zenkwe Gabriel is just one in a thousands of teachers killed by the barbaric La Republic of Cameroon colonial forces in the ongoing Ambazonian War of Independence that has already claimed over 55,000 lives.
And moving on, the story of bad roads in Amazonia continue to be a trendy report because the festive seasons now draw near and one might be expecting joy and laughter, but sadly, it is not the case for some families who have just lost rather their loved ones in series of road accidents, which is as a result of the poor road network. Now, there has been a horrible accident on a heavily traveled road built by Southern Cameroons with little or no updates from colonial La Republic for over 60 years in colonialism.
Well, while that is very sad, we already know that the Amazonian government, led by President Zqu will restructure that route that leads to Tiko International Airport. The truth is, we have to plan using our local airports to land at home and stop enriching the bankrupt La Republic de Cameroon. Meanwhile, if you have a relative in Montangane who is a bike rider, you may just have to do well to check up on him because there has been also a massive accident at the Likomba Mutangane Hill breaking this morning. And report says we have about 17 dead persons, and 17 has been recorded so far. As you can see, these are sad, horrible videos from that particular accident. Well, let's move on to see farmers battered about the ongoing war, how they are being encouraged to stay put. One of the sectors greatly affected by the ongoing war in Amazonia, the Federal Republic of Amazonia, is the agricultural sector. Many farmlands have been abandoned for security reasons. The younger and energetic population that has been targeted by La Republic de Cameroon terrorists have fled the farming zones, abandoning their farms. Any initiative to boost this sector for greater productivity is highly appreciated, though an ideal solution to these would have been addressing the root cause of the war for lasting peace. The lone council run by an opposite political party in Mason County has organized a mini agro-pastoral show. The rest of the colonial council mayors of La Republic du Cameroon party in power are busy growing their bank accounts with no consideration for the common man. This accounts for the poor nature of roads in Mason and other counties. The Bamenda Colonial Council, during the 2013 edition of the Mini Agro-Pastoral Show on Wednesday, handed farm inputs and tools to farmers after their exhibitions.
Well, farmers of Nkwane have been supported with farm tools to enable them boost their productivity and meet the increasing demand for foodstuff in the different markets. Now, this was during the mini agro pastoral show of Wednesday, just yesterday, December 13th, organized by the Colonial Bamenda Council. The turnout of this year's mini agro pastoral program was not the best as compared to the one they did last, as declared by the lone opposition party mayor in House Slave Fogu Cletus.
The representatives of the farmers saluted the organization of such a mini agro-pastoral show for them to showcase their farm produce. It was an opportunity for the farmers to present their challenge, which is that of lack of farm to market roads, to facilitate the transportation of the harvest. The farmers who answered presented exposed samples of the products ranging from grains, vegetables, and livestock. Well, according to Funga Cletus, a total of 3 million was disbursed for the purpose, part of which was used to purchase the farm inputs and farm tools to be distributed to farmers, and part for the actual organization of the program. The items handed to the farmers included fertilizers, sprayers, spades, rain boots, wheelbarrows, trucks, and cutlasses.
Well, worthy to notice, this annual mini agro-pastoral project is coming months after part of the council building was burned down by still to be identified gunmen. And on to our next report, refugee chiefs, precisely, of Manu County have been asked to return to their palaces by the colonial SDO. Chiefs from Tinto headquarters of the Upper Bayan local government area in the embattled Manu County of Amazonia have received a call to return to their villages and work for peace. Well, the call came from the colonial SDO for Manu, Viang Mikala, who wants the chiefs to return to their respective villages and join forces with the Republic of Cameroon colonial government to keep perpetrating atrocities against their own people. He made the call during a recent budgetary session convened at the Tinton Colonial Council. Now, in his words, Mikala asserted the time now is for action, the time now is for collaboration. Now, isn't it interesting, an interesting observation that these chiefs are not in their chiefdoms to start with?
Manu, like other counties in the Federal Republic of Amazonia, has been grappling with heightened insecurity, with La Republic of Cameroon terrorist forces causing chaos and besieging villages. Amid the ongoing war, traditional rulers have deserted their palaces because they can no longer face the people they had betrayed by partnering with La Republic of Cameroon colonial government. Most of them have been living away from their chiefdoms and administering their villages through traditional councils. The colonial government officials have recently intensified calls for chiefs to resume residence at their palaces, although security remains there in many villages.
Well, the Manu colonial SDO believes that mobilizing traditional rulers to work hand in hand with colonial government forces will better expose the people to their manipulations. Well, however, the colonial SDO's plea faced resistance from some right-thinking colonial councillors present during the Tinto budgetary session. Expressing their apprehensions, the councillors said they cannot go home and apologize if it is not in their domain, but a cry that the colonial administration would not forget. Now, the resistance highlights the complex challenges and concerns faced by local leaders in balancing personal safety and civic duty.
During the session, the councillors allocated a budget of 82 million francs CFA for the year 2024. The in-house leave mayor of Tinto, Echu Joseph Ayong, told the press that a good part of the budget will be allocated for the reconstruction and rehabilitation of roads in the municipality. When this money comes in, we are going to execute most of these projects that have to do with road rehabilitation. That's what he said. Despite their reservation about returning to their villages, the Tinto councillors acknowledged the pressing need for concerted efforts to address the security issues faced by the community.
Oh, well, something we should not forget, though, is when it comes to insecurity, apart from those exploiting the war in Amazonia, engaging in criminal and nefarious activities, there's also the Lari public terrorizing forces who at sight accuse random Amazonians of being terrorists and shooting them on sight. And there's been several instances to this. An example is an Amazonian wearing blue and white and being accused of being a separatist quote and an amber fighter. And Amazonia also having a unique hair court and outright bullet sprees in different local government areas by these unprofessional occupational military. Now, even as recently as yesterday, residents in Abakwa described their experience just moving about as horrific, leaving, as all of the road junctions were heavily militarized and igniting a never before experience of slow paced activities due to the fear and uncertainty as concerns safety and lives. So, for these in house slaves who decide not to go with what they're suggesting, it's a better safe thing for their local government areas because what could have happened? We can never tell.
Moving on, let's see what the Yaoundé government is doing. How can they declare a curfew in a land they claim has returned to normalcy? Now, the question is who says La Republique du Cameroon is winning? Who says La Republique du Cameroon CPDM Joker is not that of the paradoxes after shouting on the internet and everywhere, telling the world that there was no Anglophone problem? It went ahead to declare war on the armless, innocent, peace loving Ambazonians, a people only seeking for justice and their fundamental rights. After telling the world that there is a return to normalcy, the colonial Yaoundé junta, through its slave boy Atanga Nji, instructs colonial law Republic to Cameroon administrators, governors, SDOs in Ambazonia to sign administrative orders banning and regulating circulation of motorcycles. Not just that, movement of persons and goods, opening of drink spots from today till the 10th of January for the fear of the unknown.
Well, all these improvisations and improvised colonial tactics are done because of the presence of the Amazonian Restoration Forces, who have proven their worth in 7 years of resilience, no retreat, no surrender, until Boya being their mantra. Yes, there is certainly no gainsay that Amazonia and is a creed and Boya is a reality, is all colonial La Republic efforts to even counter the Monday ghost towns and other national lockdowns decreed by the federal government of Amazonia have met stiff resistance in all the 13 counties that make up Amazonia. Even the Yaoundé CPDM junta know that it cannot organize official ceremony on Mondays across Amazonians. All of the attempts have proven futile.
Well, La Republic de Cameroon hails the militias whose air disarmament and in so-called reeminent centers used blood money to buy consciences, created rival so-called Amazonian activists to no avail as the bona fide Amazonians. They all still stand tall. Today, the failed CPDM is changing tactics by inviting foreign artists, film actors, and football players, and all these is just to remain mere distractions as Ambazonia is focused on Boyer, nothing more, nothing less. As end of year festivities draws near, the Yaoundé junta dishes instructions on to their colonial administrators in all the 13 counties of Ambazonia to restrict movements because that government knows that it is no longer in command again in Ambazonia.
Well, here attached is just one from the colonial SDO for Donga Matung, Dr. Nkwenti Simon Ndo, that reflects all the other 12, stating that, quote, circulation of vehicles and motorcycles prohibited between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. Code all drinking, sport, and economic premises shall be closed from 9 p.m. till 5 a.m. According to the colonial administration, this is to check acts of banditry and terrorism in Donga Matung County. How about they start with their military? Well, the order charges CPDM pages like DOs, traditional authorities, mayors, and more for the implementation of this new rule.
Well, fuel shortage exposes crisis as it hits La Republique du Cameroon.
While major towns in corrupt and genocidal La Republique have been experiencing fuel shortages, a precarious situation that further adds to the water and energy crisis rocking the colonial republic. The severe fuel shortage is causing lots of hardship for the people. For instance, a taxi ride that would have taken probably 300 franc CFAs has gone up to 500 franc CFAs and even 1,000 franc CFAs. Now, long queues are unending at fueling stations that is those that actually even have fuel, and the fuel in those few that have fuel is rationed. And even though the government has envisaged increasing fuel prices in its 2024 budget in order to make ends meet, circumstances have smarted the corrupt Yaoundé CPDM government as a liter of fuel that sells at 730 francs CFAs is now being retailed in the quarters at 1,000 francs CFAs to 2,000 francs CFAs for those who smuggle the precarious liquid. Many car owners have packed down and now even walk.
ABC Amber TV News understands that there are several factors contributing to the fuel shortage. Firstly, Colonial Republic of Cameroon imports most of its petroleum products, and this makes it vulnerable to fluctuations in the global market. Secondly, the lone refinery in Victoria in the Atlantic, where La Republic of Cameroon taps its product, which is the main supplier of fuel to the country, has been experiencing some technical difficulties, including shady deals with Glencore and others. And thirdly, there has been logistical challenges in getting the fuel from the ports to the cities where it is highly needed. So there are both global and local factors contributing to the crisis. Hard life imposed by fuel shortages is only adding to the precarious security challenges imposed by the Amazonian freedom fighters and the Boko Haram insurgencies. And given the complex nature of the crisis, there is no simple solution that will solve this particular problem.
Well, if La Republic was not corrupt, the CPDM government would work to diversify its sources of fuel so it's not so dependent on imports and invest in upgrading the Victoria refinery so it can operate more efficiently and also improve the transport infrastructure so fuel can be distributed more effectively. And finally, try to find ways to help citizens cope with the rising cost of living by subsidizing fuel prices. Unfortunately, the genocidal corrupt country has been pocketed by a few Bulubeti white-collar thieves who invest only in their stomach and line their pockets.
According to a recent release from the Colonial Republic of Cameroon's Ministry of Energy and Water Resources, fuel supply will return to normal. This is just another flattering note as the corrupt regime has been fooling the world that there is return to normalcy in the water in Amazonia. Well, around the 10th of January earlier this year, fuel shortages persisted in Yaoundé and surrounding areas throughout least mid-January due to supply disruption. Well, you can see a data on your screen. You can use that data to plot the graph and understand exactly what we are giving to you. Now, the shortage has only disrupted the people and has caused more pain and has caused adverse effect on their people's daily activities. Coming up next is African Report.
On the African scene, Tanzania confirms death of student captured by Hamas. Well, when war strikes in any part of the world, it has a way to affect the rest of the world. When it happens with some countries, it affects other countries carrying out international trade and relations with the war-stricken country. Sometimes the lack of safety that follows the thought of visiting such countries for any purpose at all, and in other cases, citizens from other countries stand to be in the crossfire of the war-ridden nation. which becomes a concern for the government of such citizens caught in between the crossfire. A case in point is the recent news of this Tanzanian national dying at the hands of Hamas.
Well, just on Tuesday, Teachers and Students Union in Tunisia went on a 2-hour strike and protest, respectively, in protest of the ongoing war in Gaza. And today, reports by Tanzania's Foreign Affairs Ministry confirms the death of one of its nationals who was killed immediately after being captured by Hamas during the October 7 attack in southern Israel. The Israeli government had named two students from Tanzania, 22-year-old Clemens Felix Mchenga and 21-year-old Joshua Lito Morel amongst those missing since the attack. The scenario around the death is yet to be known and made public, but Tanzania's government is making arrangements to get his family there to meet with East Israel ambassadors as well as to get answers to questions surrounding the death of the Tanzanian national.
Hmm. Oh well, this confirmed debt coming even after the protests and strikes from 2 days ago, amongst other show of support for the victims of this war, show that it's more than just about everyone's involvement in creating awareness, but a proportionate action to actively bring the war to an end. But with the mediators in Sudan already giving up, we're wondering who's going to take action. Well, we're just going to find solace in Netanyahu's statement, his resilience in making sure this war comes to an end. We're being hopeful.
Well, heading on to the Sudan war, a statement by the World Food Programme, the WFP, warned on Wednesday that Sudan faces a hunger catastrophe if it cannot deliver regular food aid there due to the war. Owing to the fact that mediators suspended Sudan's ceasefire talks indefinitely, parts of war ravaged Sudan and now at high risk of slipping into catastrophic hunger conditions, according to WFP, especially by next year's lean season. It said this could happen if the UN agency is unable to expand access and deliver regular food assistance to people trapped in conflict hotspots, including the capital, Khartoum.
Now in West Africa, Senegal, it's going to be an election season as long as campaigns are still kicking in Senegal until the actual elections are finally over. The campaign period in Senegal has had twisted, with some candidates filed lawsuits and kicked out of their campaign, and to the recent development, reports we have tells us that a Senegalese court has ordered the reinstatement of jailed opposition leader Ousmane Sonko on the electoral register, a ruling that could pave the way for him to run in February presidential election. His lawyer Sir Claude Lee said this just today. Now, Sonko has faced multiple court cases over the past 2 years for charges including libel and rape, which he denies. The cases against him have triggered deadly violence in the West African nation Senegal. Of all to note from this recent development are the striking words from this aspiring President Sonko, who said, "We have confidence in the justice system. This decision doesn't surprise us. We were just afraid that they might use force against us. But this country won't go anywhere if justice doesn't work." And I could say the same for every other country.
Mm. Well, can that be said about West Africa, where the US is ready to resume cooperation with Niger on conditions? During Washington's visit to Niamey on Tuesday, that is after it suspended its cooperation with Niger after the July 26 coup that overthrew the former President Mohamed Bazoum, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State for African Affairs held discussions with several Nigerian officials, including the Prime Minister appointed by the military, Ali Mohamed Laim Zain.
Oh, well, she emphasized that the Nigerian military power must announce a deadline for a rapid and credible transition leading to a democratically elected government. Before a junta who already has plans to rule for only about 3 years before transitioning to civilian rule after a national dialogue, I wouldn't think that is a problem. Well, she added to the press that we have confirmed that we are ready to resume our cooperation if the CNSP, that is the military regime, takes the step she has. And that's about it for the African scene. Coming up next, we'll dive into the global scene.
Well, the war in Russia and Ukraine seems to have intensified over the past few days. Now, let's get to you all of the intriguing reports emanating from the war. Let's start with Ukraine war. Putin telling Russia his war objectives are still unchanged. Russian President Vladimir Putin has told Russians that peace with Ukraine will only take place when they achieve their objective. While he's holding his first major news conference since he launched his first full scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Mr. Putin has combined his annual direct line phone calling with Russians with an audience of journalists. Well, the annual event took place last year. Mr. Putin of Russian sovereignty.
Oh well, another report says South Korea's Chinese Russian enter defense zone. Now, Mr. Putin has combined his annual direct line rather, in with Russians with an audience of journalists. The annual event didn't miss last year, but is taking place this year. Mr. Putin begins the marathon event by speaking about the importance of Russian sovereignty. Going further, South Korea's military told that it has deployed fighter jets in response to Chinese and Russian military planes flying into its air defense zone unannounced. Four Russian and two Chinese aircraft crossed into the Korean Air Defense Identification Zone (CADIZ) over the Sea of Japan, also known as the East Sea, between 11:53 a.m. that is 2:53 GMT and 12:10 p.m. that is 3:10 GMT on Thursday, and then departed. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff (JCS) said this in a statement.
Now let's get to find out other war-related stories. U.S. intelligence assessment says that nearly half of the Israeli munitions dropped on Gaza are imprecise dump bombs. Nearly half of the air-to-ground munitions that Israel has used in its in its war torn. Nearly half of the air to ground munitions that Israel has used in Gaza in its war with Hamas since October 7th has been unguided, otherwise known as dome bombs, according to the new U.S. assistance. The assessments compiled by the Office of the Director of the National Intelligence and described to the CNN by three sources who have seen it says that about 40 to 45% of the 2009 air-to-ground munitions Israel has used have been unguided. The rest have been precision guided munitions. Now, that's what the assessment said. So, unguided munitions are typically less precise and can pose a greater threat to civilians, especially in such a densely populated area like Gaza. The rate at which Israel is using the dumb bombs may be contributing to the soaring civilian death toll.
While still on the global scene, Ukraine has figured out a new way to win battles, starting by grounding Russian drones. While it is not for no reason, the Russian assault on Avdiivka, a key Ukrainian stronghold in eastern Ukraine Donbas region, seems to be stalling out. There are indications the Ukrainians have deployed their new drone and counter-drone strategy, targeting the radio jammers the Russians used to ground Ukraine's drones, while setting up their own jammers to ground Russian drones.
Well, moving on, the Russia blindsides China. Now, the Kremlin is discrediting China by continuing to import components, military equipment, and dual purpose goods under the international sanctions. It is mostly likely that Moscow uses military intelligence, not just the intelligence, but also its channels to ensure the purchase of scarce goods and components. The war between Ukraine and Russia has truly emerged as a war of drones. Now, while Iran and Turkey produce large military grade drones used by Russia and Ukraine, the cheap consumer drones that have become ubiquitous on the front line says to have come from China.
Well, moving on, Zelensky meets with Biden and lawmakers in push for more Ukraine aid. President Joe Biden reiterated U.S. support for Ukraine in a news conference with President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House on Tuesday as he called on the U.S. Congress to pass a new aid package for Kyiv. Early on Tuesday, Biden announced an additional $200 million in drawdown funds for Kyiv. He warned during the news conference that Russian President Vladimir Putin is counting on the U.S. to fail to provide support to Ukraine. Zelensky also met with U.S. lawmakers Tuesday on Capitol Hill to advocate for more aid as discussions remain stalled in Congress. Lawmakers still appear no closer to a deal tying immigration and border policy changes to the package that will provide funding for Ukraine and Israel. House Speaker Mike Johnson said his conditions for Ukraine aid remains unchanged after meeting with Zelensky. Well, that's about it for the global scene. Coming up next will be sport.
All right, and with that foreign report, we've come to the end of Undaunted tonight. But before we go, let's get you the major highlights of tonight's reports.
Yes. Well, for the national news, we had the GTHS as burned down with 12 students and two staffs taken away by an armed gang. And also, we had lives lost on the Tiko Mutangene due to bad roads again. Farmers in Nkwe get support to boost their productivity at a mini agro-pastoral event this December.
Well, tonight on Undaunted, we told you that the occupier La Republic de Cameroon military shoots another teacher to death in the local government area. In Mudembe, fear envelopes the two water and energy workers who were arrested. Yaoundé government declared curfew in all Amazonian 13 counties as end of the year festivities draws near. Also tonight, fuel shortages exposes crisis hit by La Republic de Cameroon government. All the African scene, we told you that Tanzania confirms death of students captured by Hamas, and on the foreign scene, nearly half of the Israeli munitions dropped in Gaza are imprecise dumb bombs. That's how the US registered it. And that's it for tonight's Undaunted. Bringing into the news on show stories on behalf of Star Smart and the entire Undaunted crew. We say thank you for tuning in.
We live with ABC Amber TV Images. Good night and God bless you.